السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
حياكم الله، أحسن الله عليكم يا أستاذ الفاضل. حالكم؟
وإليكم الله يفضلكم.
الحمد لله، بارك الله فيكم.
فيكم بارك.
Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to meet here with our brothers and sisters, going over one of the most important and the fundamental principles of the deen, that is the aspect of Tawheed. The book Kitaab At-Tawheed of the noble Imam Al-Mujaddid Al-Allama Shaykh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahaab bin Sulaiman At-Tamimi rahimahullah wa ta'ala. The commentary of Al-Allama Shaykh Ubaid bin AbdiLlah Al Jabirī rahimahullah wa ta'ala. فليتفضل الأستاذ الفاضل مشكورا محجورا مسددا ومنصورا.
الله يبارك فيكم وجزاكم الله خيرا. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. So we continue with our study of this book, Kitaab At-Tawheed, by Shaykh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahaab alayhi rahmatullah. And we are picking up this evening, or on this day, from the chapter entitled Bab Man Haqqaqa At-Tawheed Dakhal Al-Jannah Bighayri Hisab. Chapter, whoever actualizes At-Tawheed will enter into paradise without any reckoning. وقول الله تعالى إن إبراهيم كان أمة قانتا لله حنيفا ولم يكن من المشركين وقال والذين هم بربهم لا يشركون. And the statement of Allah the Exalted, where he mentions indeed Ibrahim, he was an ummah qanita lillah, he was one who was devoutly obedient to Allah. Hanif, he was a Hanif, a true monotheist. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, he was not amongst the polytheists. And the statement of Allah Ta'ala when he says وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ بِرَبِّهِمْ لَا يُشْرِكُونَ, and those who do not associate partners with their Lord. For the sake of time, bidnillahi ta'ala, as I'm about to travel here shortly, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to take the first ayah and the explanation of the first ayah, and we'll save the next ayah for the next sitting, bidnillahi ta'ala. And so Shaykh Ubaid mentions in the commentary, إن هذه الترجمة تناسب ما سبقها مناسبة قوية, that this chapter heading, it is appropriate to be mentioned after the chapter headings that preceded it. It is greatly appropriate. وذلكم أن مصنف رحمه الله أبان في البابين السابقين. And this is due to the fact that the chapter that the author, may Allah mercy upon him, clarified in the two preceding chapters. في الأول منهما عبادة الله الخالصة. Within the first of them, he clarified the pure, unadulterated worship of Allah Ta'ala alone. When شئت فقول, and if you will, you can say كيف تكون عبادة الله خالصة. How can one's worship of Allah Ta'ala be pure? How can we purify our worship, making it solely for Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala? أو كيف تكون العبادة الخالصة لله, or how is worship determined to be pure? How, on what basis do we determine worship to be pure for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal? وهذا يظهر من سياق ما تضمنت الترجمة من الأدلة على وجوب إفراد الله بالعبادة. And this is apparent and clear from the context of that which that chapter contains within it, from evidences and proofs regarding the obligation of singling out Allah Ta'ala with worship. كما أبانت ترجمة الباب الثاني من هذا الكتاب ثمرات التوحيد من خلال ما ساقه من الأدلة في باب فضل التوحيد. Just as the second chapter within Kitaab At-Tawheed, and this is what you'll find as we want to draw the attention of the listeners to. And when you read Kitaab At-Tawheed, the ordering of the chapters is not random. It's not just the author compiled some chapters and then slapped them together. Rather, he was very meticulous in the arranging and ordering of the chapters of Kitaab At-Tawheed. So each chapter is appropriate to be mentioned, is it appropriate to come in the order in which it came inside of the book. And the chapter that comes after that, and it is appropriate to be mentioned in the chapter that comes after it, and so on and so forth. So you look, and this is what Shaykh Ubaid is drawing your attention to. The first chapter in Kitaab At-Tawheed, he discusses the issue of how to purify our worship and make it solely for Allah Ta'ala. Next chapter, he goes into the fruits and benefits of that. You see? Now, and he says, and so he discusses the fruits of Tawheed by way of that which he has cited within it from evidences in the chapter dealing with Bab Fadl At-Tawheed, chapter, the virtue of At-Tawheed. والتي يظهر منها فوائد التوحيد وثمراته. And likewise, he discusses that which makes apparent and clear the benefits of At-Tawheed and its fruits على أهله في الدنيا والآخرة, upon the people of Tawheed in the dunya as well as the hereafter. Now we get to this chapter, and we see after those two preceding chapters why this chapter is appropriate to come next. So the foundation is set for how to purify our worship. Then we see what are the fruits and benefits of purifying that worship and making it solely for Allah Ta'ala. Now we discuss the affair of the one who does so, the one who does that, and he actualizes At-Tawheed, how he will enter into paradise بغير حساب, without any reckoning. Now, so وفي هذه الترجمة ينبه المصنف إلى أن أعلى الناس كمالا هو من حقق التوحيد. Well, in this chapter, you'll find that the author, he clarifies and explains and draws attention to the fact that the highest of the people in terms of their perfection and completion, they are those who actualize the affair of Tawheed, the affair that has been spoken about in the two previous chapters. ولهذا قال, due to this he said, باب من حقق التوحيد دخل الجنة بغير حساب, that whoever actualizes At-Tawheed will enter into paradise without a hisab, without a reckoning. And we can appropriately attach to that wala adab, and without any punishment, as we're going to see as we get deeper into the chapter, the text that indicate this principle. This principle. Now they contain mention of wala adab, and no adab, and no punishment, because it is inconceivable that hisab is going to be negated, but adab is still going to be there. It's not the case that reckoning is negated, but there will still be punishment. You don't get reckoned, but you get punished. No, the one who actualizes At-Tawheed, he will not have to have any reckoning. And we're going to discuss what is intended by actualizing At-Tawheed and the absence of the reckoning here. And we're likewise going to get into the affair of what is intended by بغير حساب, without any reckoning. This is going to come later, inshallah ta'ala, in the chapter, and we'll discuss that in one of the upcoming lessons. But here he says there is a su'al, there's a question. ما معنى تحقيق التوحيد? What is the meaning of actualization of At-Tawheed? And the jawab to that is that تحقيق التوحيد هو تصفيته من شائبة الشرك والبدع والخرافة وكذلك البعد عن المعاصي. فمن سلمه الله من الشرك صغيره وكبيره سلم من البدع ومن الله عليه وسلم من البدع ومن الله عليه باجتناب المعاصي فأولئك هم الكمال في الموحدين. The actualization of At-Tawheed, it is purifying one's Tawheed from the filth of polytheism, from the filth of bid'ah, from the filth of khurafa and superstitious beliefs, and likewise distancing oneself from sins. For whoever Allah Ta'ala keeps him safe from shirk, and major shirk and minor shirk, and Allah Ta'ala keeps him safe and secure from innovations, and Allah favors him with the avoidance of sins, then they are those who are the most complete amongst the muwahideen. So the muwahideen, as we see, are variant levels. People of Tawheed are of variant levels. Some, they have Tawheed, but there may be blemishes, if you will, in their tawheed. And those blemishes, it may not be shirk necessarily, it may not be major shirk, or it may not be something which is inconceivable. As we're going to see, and once we get to some of the upcoming text, it may not be something which is so inconceivable, but it will remove the completion and perfection of a person's tawheed. And had he stayed away from that, he would have perfected his tawheed. Now, and so the people of tawheed are varying level, but the people who are like this, they are the most complete of the people of tawheed. وهم الذين حققوا التوحيد, and they are those who actualize التوحيد. وهذا تنبيه آخر إلى أن المعاصي وهي إذا أطلقت أريد بها الكبائر تنافي كمال الواجب في التوحيد. And all of this, this last point that he mentioned, the affair of sins and disobedience, this draws attention to the fact that disobedience, and this is with the understanding that whenever ma'asi is mentioned, then what is intended by it is the kaba'ir, is the major sins. Then ma'asi, sins on this level, tunafi al-kamal al-wajib, it negates and does away with that completion. So we understand how something can be, the completion or perfection of something can be removed, but the thing is still there. The thing is still there. Now, so the tawheed may still be present, but the completion and perfection of it, that is wajib, that you are supposed to have, is not there. وَتُنَافِي كَذَلِكَ الْكَمَالَ الْوَاجِبِ فِي الْإِيمَانِ, just as it as well negates and does away with that completion that is wajib, that we are supposed to have with our iman. So the iman is still present. We're not negating iman for the one who sins or commits major sins. We don't negate iman in totality. But what has been negated here is that kamal, that perfection and completion that we are obliged to have within our iman, meaning that one's iman, therefore, is deficient. As we know, sins, they decrease our iman. It's the aqeedah of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Now, فإذا تقرر هذا, once this is confirmed, فما أودعه المصنف تحت هذه الترجمة من الأدلة على وجوب تحقيق التوحيد والثناء على أهله, هذه الأدلة تتألف من آيتين من كتاب الله. So once we affirm this, and that which the author has cited under this chapter heading from evidences for the obligation of actualizing one's tawheed and praise and commendation of the people who do so, these evidences here are comprised and made up of 2 verses from the book of Allah Ta'ala, meaning that which comes directly under the chapter heading are these 2 verses. And again, we're going to take the first bi'idhnillahi ta'ala in this sitting. And likewise, he mentions that after 2 authentic narrations from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. فالآية الأولى, so the first verse, ظاهرة الدلالة على أن إبراهيم صلى الله عليه وسلم قد أثنى عليه ربه وأعلى ذكره وشرف مقامه في عباد الله, وذلكم أن هذه الآية هي آية النحل تضمنت 4 أوصاف وصف الله بها خليله وعبده ورسوله إبراهيم صلى الله عليه وسلم. The indication within the first verse is clear. It is clear, indicating the fact that Ibrahim, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala praised him and commended him, and he raised and elevated his mention, and he made his status to be a status that was a noble status amongst the slaves of Allah Azza wa Jal. And it is because this verse, which is a verse of Surah An-Nahl 120, Surah An-Nahl 120. And if you can memorize these proofs and evidences, this is good for you. You memorize the proofs and evidences, and you have the adillah right there whenever the need arises for you to rebut some erroneous idea or thought process and the likes. It's in Surah An-Nahl, verse 120. Within this verse, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, he describes Ibrahim with 4 characteristics. With 4 characteristics. We want to take a look at these 4, inshallah ta'ala. He says that, he describes his Khalil, his Abd, his Rasul, Ibrahim with these characteristics. وهذه الأوصاف هي الغاية التي ليست فوقها غاية في تكميل التوحيد والتحقيق. And these four characteristics, they are the epitome. They are the highest station, which there is no station above it in terms of the actualization of one's tawheed and its completion. So let's look at these characteristics. The first of them that Allah Ta'ala described Ibrahim with what is what in the verse, that he was an ummah. Look at the verse, inshallah ta'ala. If you have your Quran with you or your Mus'haf with you, open your Quran to Surah An-Nahl, verse 120, and examine the verse along with us. Shaykh Ubaid mentions the first wasf is in the statement of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, Inna Ibrahim kana ummatan. Ibrahim was an ummah. He was a nation. He was a nation. Naam wa ma'na ummah. The meaning of ummah here is imam yuqtada bih. He is an imam that is followed, and he is his example. Yani it should be taken. We should take the example of Ibrahim. Naam. The second description that he has described Ibrahim with is that he was qanitan. He was qanit. والقنوت في معانيه مداومة الطاعات ما كان منها فرضا وما كان منها نفلا. Is that Ibrahim is perpetual upon at-ta'at, obedience to Allah Ta'ala. He was always in a state of obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal. And whether those obediences were in connection to that which is an obligation, or it was in connection to that which is supererogatory. وَكَذَلِكَ اجْتِنَابُ الْمُحَرَّمَاتِ وَالْمَكْرُوهَاتِ. Likewise, it is the avoidance of that which is impermissible and the avoidance of that which is even disliked. This is what is intended by qanit. So we see Ibrahim had these two characteristics, that he was an ummah, meaning an imam that is to be followed in terms of his example, in aqidah, in manhaj, naam, likewise in his suluk and his mannerisms, and so on and so forth. He's an imam who was to be followed. Naam. And he was qanit. He was one who was perpetually upon the obedience of Allah Ta'ala. We see how someone who bears these two characteristics, they are someone who has actualized the affair of At-Tawhīd. But then he added to that the third description, Hanifan, a true, pure monotheist. The meaning of Hanif in the Arabic language is, it is derived from Al-Hanaf. And the asl of Al-Hanaf, it is Al-Mail fil Qadam. It is a type of bend in one's foot. Yuqalu, for example, Rajulun Ahnaf, that this is a man that is Ahnaf, that he has a type of bend in his foot that causes him to lean a particular direction when he walks. Or Imra'atun Hanfa, likewise the woman, she is Hanfa. This is the feminine form of Hanaf or Ahnaf. Ay ma'ilat aqdamahum, and this means that their feet, we call it slew-footed here in America. I'm not sure what they call it, where you may be. Person may be slew-footed, and it causes them to walk a certain way. Now, their feet, it leans, or it bends outward. Now, هنا وفي نعم والحنيف هنا وفي سائر آية التنزيل الكريم التي جاءت في هذا المعنى. And the term Hanif, as it comes here in this verse, and likewise other verses that have come within the noble legislation of, or the noble revelation of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, in which which bear this meaning, it means هو المائل قصدا بالكلية من الشرك إلى التوحيد. It is the one who leans intentionally away in totality from shirk towards At-Tawhīd. So we see the relation between the linguistic meaning and the legislative meaning. So Ibrahim was like this. He was a Hanif, one who leaned totally away with everything that he had from shirk towards At-Tawhīd. The fourth characteristic that Allah Ta'ala described him with, and it is an affirmation or to add emphasis to the third description, is that Allah Ta'ala said concerning him, وَلَمْ يَكُوا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. He was not amongst the mushrikeen. He was not amongst the polytheists. Now, so in this lies a rebuttal of groups like the Shia, for example, who believe that simply because someone comes from the lineage of a prophet, then this means that they are infallible, just as the prophet himself was infallible, because the Arab, they were descendants of Ibrahim, his son Ismail, and many of them, they fell into what? Shirk. But Allah Ta'ala negated that shirk from his prophet. He negated what they were upon from his prophet and his Khalil and his servant and his messenger, Ibrahim alayhi salam, even though his descendants were upon what? Polytheism. Now, and so he mentions, وَلَمْ يَكُنْ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. He was not amongst the polytheists. وَهَذِهِ الْأَوْصَافِ وَمَا مَائِلُهَا مِمَّا يَقُصُّهُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا في كتابه من أوصاف خواصه بل خواص أوليائه هي تذكر أولا. He says, so these descriptions, نعم عفوا وما ماثلها مما نعم. So these descriptions وما ماثلها مما يقصه الله علينا في كتابه من أوصاف خواصه. So these descriptions and that which is similar to them from that which Allah Ta'ala has mentioned and narrated to us within his book, from the descriptions of the elite amongst his servants, rather from even the elite amongst his awliya, because the awliya of Allah Ta'ala are who? Every mu'min at-taqi, every believer who is a taqi. Now, but amongst them there are those who are more elite, like the prophets and messengers. And so whatever comes to us in description of the elite amongst the slaves of Allah Ta'ala, and rather the elite amongst the elite amongst the awliya of Allah Ta'ala, it is mentioned firstly tashweeqan bi ahliha, as a means of commendation and elevation of the rank of its people, wa thana'an jamilan alayhim, and a good type of commendation for them. Secondly, it is mentioned tanbih ila wujub al-iqtida bi ulaikum al-mawsufin. It is mentioned as a tanbih, to draw your attention to the obligation of taking those types of people who have been described with these lofty and beautiful characteristics as your examples and role models. يواضح هذا في إبراهيم خاصة. And what goes further to clarify this affair regarding Ibrahim specifically is the statement of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, قَدْ كَانَتْ لَكُمْ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ فِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ إِذْ قَالُوا لِقَوْمِهِمْ إِنَّا بَرَاءٌ مِّنْكُمْ. And there is for you a beautiful role model and example in Ibrahim and those who were along with him, meaning from the believers, those who believed along with him, when they said to their people, إِنَّا بَرَاءٌ مِّنْكُمْ, indeed we are free of you. So we see manhaj here, being free and far removed and disassociating oneself from shirk and his people. It's what we learn in our books of Aqidah. Now, al-Islamu al-Istislamu lillahi bit-Tawheed. Now, the Islam is to yield to Allah Ta'ala in Tawheed. Now, wal-inqiyadu lahu bit-ta'a, to yield to him in obedience, wa bara'atu min ash-shirki wahdi, to free oneself from shirk and his people. And we have the example of Ibrahim and his people here. This bara'ah that they are making, this freeing themselves of shirk and the people of shirk. Now, and so, al-ayah, he says, فَتَحَصَّلَ لَدَيْنَا أَنَّ إِبْرَاهِيمَ هُوَ السَّيِّدُ وَحَقِّقِي التَّوْحِيدِ. So it becomes clear to us from this that Ibrahim, he is the chief of those who actualize the Tawheed. وَأَنَّ الْإِقْتِدَاءَ بِهِ فِي ذَلِكَ وَاجِبٌ. And that following his example, and that is wajib. وَيَزِيدُ هَذَا تَوْكِيدًا أَنَّ اللَّهَ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى أَمَرَ نَبِيَّنَا مُحَمَّدًا صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ بِاتِّبَاعِ مِلَّتِهِ. And what emphasizes this fact is that Allah Ta'ala commanded our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to follow his religion, to follow the religion of Ibrahim in many places inside of his book. From that is the statement of Allah Ta'ala, ثُمَّ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ أَنِ اتَّبِعْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا. And then we have revealed to you, O Muhammad, that you are to follow the religion of Ibrahim and be a true monotheist. وقال جل وعلا في موضع He mentions in another verse, Inna awla nasa bi Ibrahim lalladhina taba'uhu wa hadha an-nabi walladhina amanu, that those who have the most right to Ibrahim are those who followed him purely and sincerely and truthfully followed him, and likewise this prophet and those who are believers. Now, we're going to stop there, inshallah ta'ala, because he goes into now the explanation of the second verse. We'll save that for the next sitting. Allah ta'ala knows best. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We had a few as'ila. I can just a second. I'll look at these questions. No. So the first question: can we take knowledge from Uthman al-Khamis from Kuwait? I don't know him personally, but we know the Salafi scholars of Kuwait, and we do not find the Salafi scholars of Kuwait working and cooperating with this Uthman al-Khamis. Again, I don't know him. I would say refer back to Shaykh Khalid al-Zafiri, حفظه الله, there in Kuwait. He can tell you his condition. Can we travel to a Kafir country for tourism if we currently reside in a Kafir country? If a person wants to, take his family on a vacation and the likes of this, we say, why not take them on Umrah? If you're going to spend all of this money on vacations and trips and transportation and food and hotels and whatever comes along with traveling for tourism, why not take them on Umrah? Or are you tired of Umrah? Or you're just bored with Umrah? Take them, to perform this tremendous act of worship, and that way you are able to do something with your family. You're able to benefit in this life as well as the hereafter, and you're able to see some sights and things like this. My advice would be to take your family on Umrah. As for the permissibility of going one place or another place, it depends on the place and the situation. But if I could avoid it, I wouldn't give the kuffar a dime of my money. Allah Ta'ala knows best. I heard it is compulsory for a woman to cover her face, but I read a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, when sister of Aisha came over his face, he covered his face with his hands, saying if a woman reaches maturity, she should cover her whole body, with the exception of he indicated the face and hands, and I don't know about the legs. So we say that this is a question that goes back to the conditions of the hijab of the Muslim woman. From the condition of the hijab of the Muslim woman is that it covers the entirety of her. It covers the entirety of her. Likewise, from its conditions is that it is loose fitting, and no non-mahramin are going to be able to see those parts of her that only her maharam can see, and that it is not a zina in and of itself. It's not a means of decoration in and of itself. It should not be perfumed. Now, it should not be decorated. This is amongst the conditions that the ulama mentioned regarding the hijab of the Muslim woman. As it relates to covering the face, the issue of covering the face, then it is known that the scholars have differed regarding its obligation. Some of them hold it to be wajib. Some of them say that it is not wajib, but it is better and closer to righteousness. However, those scholars who say that it is not wajib, but it is better and closer to righteousness, they say that in certain situations, it becomes wajib. So even the scholars who say it's not wajib, they say that in certain situations, it will become wajib. Now, such as in a situation wherein fitna is feared. In a situation when fitna is feared. So, another point that we want to mention in connection with this is that if your husband wants you to wear it, now, the woman is between these two affairs. The affair that, one, her husband wants this of her. Two, it is closer to righteousness and better. So she can make her choice from there. She can choose to go against her husband's wishes and do something which is less virtuous, or she can choose to obey the wishes of her husband and likewise do something which is more righteous and better. And Allah Ta'ala knows best. But in certain situations, even those scholars who say that it's not wajib, hold that it will become wajib, again, if fitness feared, and what time is fitna more feared than this time in which we live, or in certain situations where any fitna is feared. Allah Ta'ala knows best. What is the least amount of rak'ah for the witr prayer? The least amount of rak'ah for the witr prayer is 1. With this being the case, you'll find that if a person does not pray witr, in spite of the fact that the least amount that you can make is 1 rak'ah. Who can't make 1 rak'ah? In spite of the fact that it's only 1 rak'ah, you still don't do it. This is great deprivation of oneself from an abundance of khair that is easy for one to attain. So for this reason, we find, as we mentioned to our brothers yesterday in our dars, that some of the people of hadith of the past, they will not accept a narration from a person once they knew that he didn't get up at night and pray the night prayer. Something so easy, only 1 rak'ah, and you just don't do it. Well, musta'an. The sister says, I live in Oman with my husband, and I had a question regarding Hajj. Me and my husband want to go for Hajj this year, but in our country, we are not allowed to take small kids along with us for Hajj. We either have the option of leaving them under a caretaker or canceling our Hajj. My daughter is only 14 months old, and I still breastfeed her, but Hajj has become hard upon me and my husband. So we want to know whether we should go or we can delay it for another year. We say that in order for Hajj to become obligatory, then there are 2 conditions that must be fulfilled. One, that one has the that in order for Hajj to be obligatory, one must have the ability, and the ability is determined by way of 2 things. One, he has the physical ability, and he has the means. So you got the financial ability, which is the means, and you have the physical. You're physically able to go. If one does not have the means, or they're not able to go, then Hajj is not an obligation upon them just yet. So one may have the means, for example, you may have the money, but you're not physically capable of doing it. In this case, we say, until you are physically capable of doing it, or you find someone who can make Hajj on your behalf with your money, then in this case, Hajj is not yet binding upon you until your situation changes. In your case, sister, if your husband has the financial ability and he's physically able, it may be more binding upon him at this point than it may be upon you, because your daughter, you're still breastfeeding your child. I believe she said it was a daughter. You're still you're still breastfeeding your daughter. She's in need of your milk. So unless you're able to wean her between now and Hajj season, then you may not be able to go this year. But this doesn't mean that your husband can't go. However, it would mean the fact that next year, when you are capable of going, inshallah ta'ala, then your husband would have to go again to take you, or some other mahram of yours, your father, your brother, what have you. And Allah ta'ala makes that. I currently live in Gambia, Africa, and there is a small community of Salafis. Alhamdulillah, we are beginning to plan for the upcoming Eid, inshallah. And swimming had come up, as we will possibly be at the beach celebrating our Eid. Beautiful. Jameel, mashallah. And I wanted clarification on the permissibility of swimming, inshallah, as knowledge precedes speech and action. No, swimming is permissible, provided that it doesn't entail something which is impermissible, such as free mixing, or the men being able to see the women, things like this. But if it's just some brothers going swimming, provided that they're not uncovering their aura, they're not, taking their clothes off and things like this, then there's nothing wrong with swimming. Perfectly permissible, mashallah. Wish I can make it with you guys. Is it sunnah to move the right index finger into shahad? The sunnah of the moving of the finger with tashahhud is established in the book within the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. However, the howness of this, how is it to be done? This is something else. As it relates to how it is to be done, then the scholars have mentioned that it is a slight movement, that one raises the index finger, and it's a slight movement that almost looks as though the finger is vibrating. But it's not an up and down motion, not a circular motion as you see some of the people doing, nor is it a side to side motion as you see some of the people doing. Some of the people move their fingers so vigorously that the whole arm is shaking. But rather, it is a constant, steady, vibrating motion with the finger at its base, so that it looks as though the finger is just shaking slightly. This is how the finger is to be moved into shahid, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. May Allah preserve you upon khair. May Allah Ta'ala preserve you as well. What do I do if my parents do not want me to wear the niqab? I use the nose mask while going out. Am I obliged to obey them if they ask me to remove it too? What advice do you have for me as well? Alhamdulillah, if you've heard the niqab covering the face, it is better and closer to righteousness. This is the viewpoint of Shaykh Al-Albani, while others amongst our ulama hold it to be obligatory. So convince them with kind words and gentleness if you can. However, we do have some of our ulama who say that it's not a wajib, it's not obligatory. So perhaps try to convince them that, hey, you're trying to please your Lord, and this is what is important to you, and you're trying to get closer to your Lord Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and do what is pleasing to Him. And inshallah ta'ala, their position softens up a bit as it relates to this issue. But be patient. These are your parents, and they have a great, tremendous right over you. So as long as they're not commanding you to do something which is clear disobedience to Allah Ta'ala, then try to accommodate them and make them happy as much as you can. But strive to convince them, inshallah ta'ala. Allah knows best. What is the Islamic way, sunnah, of writing letters? And if it is written to the disbeliever, should it start with the basmala? No, as the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam, when he would write to the different disbelieving kings and governors and like this, he will begin these letters with the basmala. He will begin it with the basmala. So it should start with the basmala. And the meaning of it here is with the name of Allah Ta'ala, I write. With the name of Allah Ta'ala, I write. And like this, as far as we know, Allah knows best. Much more can be said regarding this issue. Shaykh Abu Hassan Malik, I believe, he did a lecture series regarding the letters of the Prophet that he would write to the different kings and provinces, and like this, giving da'wah. Beautiful lecture, which was full of benefit. I advise you to try to locate that lecture, if you can, inshallah ta'ala. And he has an article that was compiled on that subject matter. How does a Muslim go about getting help with finding a suitable spouse if she's unable to get help from a local Salafi masjid and she doesn't have a wali? This is the issue. She should establish wilaya. She should establish someone as being a wali over her, whether it is from the local masjid or whether it may be from another masjid or what have you. It should be a Salafi, inshallah ta'ala, someone that is trustworthy and upright. And once she establishes that, then she can make it known that hey, she's looking for a righteous spouse. She can even speak to some of the sisters that she knows, and let the sisters that she is okay with know that she's looking for a righteous husband, and perhaps their husbands have friends who are trying to get married as well. But she should not by any means put herself upon the likes of these matrimonial websites, nor should she go perusing herself around the internet and things like this. But rather, she should maintain her modesty and her shyness and her chastity. And maintaining shyness is amongst the means of finding a suitable spouse, as we see in the story of Musa alayhi salam, when he watered the flocks of those two young ladies who were they had their sheep, and they were staying back from mixing and mingling with the men because they didn't want to go mix and mingle with the men. And this drew the attention of who? Musa. And who's a better man than that? One of the messengers of strong will. So you see the effect of shyness in finding a good man, because a good man wants a good woman. A good man, a righteous spouse, a righteous man, he wants a righteous wife or righteous woman. Allah knows best. Now, a woman remembers that she breastfed a boy some years ago. It was done twice while the mother was dead. Can this boy be a wali? No, the boy cannot be a wali. As it has to be 5 satisfying suckles, meaning 5 instances wherein the child latches on and drinks until it's full or satisfied. This happens 5 times, and at that point, that child becomes a mahram for the woman who breastfed him, and likewise everything that extends out from that woman, her daughters, and so on and so forth, her granddaughters, and like this. Allah's best. What are ways to show kindness and patience with family when they always find ways to argue and be in a disagreement? It becomes unbearable. The one who mixes with the people is better than and bears their harm is better than the one that doesn't mix with the people and doesn't bear their harm. In terms of family members, you're gonna, if they're disturbing you in terms of your religion and they're causing you harm in your religion and like this, then you mix and mingle with them to the extent that is necessary. And you try to do your part to make those interactions pleasant. You don't let them get under your skin. You don't let them, bother you as much as as much as possible. But you restrict it to what is necessary. Inshallah ta'ala, keeping the family ties. Perhaps you call, you check on them, see how they're doing, how your children, and so on and so forth. Ask about them, and be there if they need you. But if they're, causing you disturbance in your religion and in your sanity and in your emotional state, then restrict it to that which is necessary. Questioner asks about the conditions that allow for combining 2 prayers, meaning Maghrib and Isha. Also, is it permissible for a person to leave the masjid and refuse to follow the imam in combining the salah? So you have 2 sides here. You got the side of the imam. Now, one thing that we have to know and understand, that combining can be done while one's traveling, or it can be done as a resident. As a resident, what it's connected to is the level of difficulty. So, what the scholars have mentioned, that combining the prayers is the right of the imam. So people should not try to compel him to combine the prayers if the imam does not feel as though the prayers should be combined. That's his right. Now, secondly, if there is a level of difficulty that would necessitate a hardship on the people for coming out for the next prayer to the masjid, then the prayers can be combined, such as, but not limited or restricted to, rain. It's not limited or restricted to rain. But in the case of rain, the scholars have stated it should be the type of rain that soaks the clothing and it causes the pathway towards the masjid, the roads, or what have you, to become muddied and difficult to navigate. As for light rain or a drizzle and the likes of this, you find some people, they will combine the prayers because it's drizzling outside or it gets cloudy. And we say the prayers are not to be combined in this state. Allah knows best. But it can be extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme weather conditions. All these things are from, perhaps it's snowy, a lot of snow and the likes of this. All these are amongst the permissible reasons to combine the prayers. And this is within the masjid. As there are other reasons that a person can combine the prayers, such as a person may be traveling or returning from travel, and the likes of this. Allah's best. This will take a whole lesson in reality to cover the issue of combining the prayers. This is just some of what can be mentioned on this topic. Is it obligatory for a Muslim woman to lose her hair for ghusl following hayd or mustahab? Again, another issue which there's khilaf about between the ulama. Some of them say that for hayd, for menstrual blood, for when she becomes pure from a menstrual cycle, then she has to unloosen her hair in order to perform ghusl from that, but not so after the ghusl or during the ghusl for janaba. That's because janaba, she would be in this state more frequently than she would be coming upon her cycle. The cycle normally comes around once a month, but relations between spouses, it happens more frequently. And so some of them, they hold that, and as it relates to the ghusl from janaba, she would not have to unloose her hair, but from the ghusl after her menstrual cycle, she would have to unloosen her hair. While others hold that she doesn't have to do so either time. Now, and Allah Ta'ala knows best regarding this issue. I've always inclined towards the opinion of the scholars who hold that she would have to remove it after her menstrual cycle. She would have to remove her braids after her menstrual cycle. But there's a wajh, for the other scholars who hold the other viewpoint, and they have their wajh, they have their their evidences and their proofs. So if one were to take the other evidence, the other position based upon dalil, I would not criticize this person. There's a man that says he is related to me, and he says my father's his father. My father's deceased. Is it permissible to talk to him via phone or message to find out if he's actually related to me? I would say you maybe take someone that you know is related to you, perhaps your husband, perhaps your brother or your uncle or what have you, and you talk to him in the presence of that person to ascertain if he is truly your family member. Because if he is your brother, then you would need, it would behoove you to go ahead and join the ties of the womb. If he's just some guy who's trying to, do something underhanded or what have you, then that relative of yours who you know is your relative will be a means of protection, inshallah ta'ala. Allah knows best. The hadith that mentions a person dies of stomach illness or disease, dies as a martyr, is this also for the person that dies of cancer? General cancer, then we can't add something to the hadith that's not there. Just general saratan, we can't add something to the hadith that's not there. There's different types of cancer. It could be colon cancer. It could be cancer in the some other part of the body or what have you, other than the stomach. The hadith mentions stomach. And so, but if a person has stomach cancer, then we say that this will enter into the hadith. But how do we understand the hadith now? Shaykh Al-Albani is mentioned concerning the hadith that all of these things are a sign of a good ending. They are a sign of a good ending, but we don't know the person's reality and state with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So we can't go calling someone a martyr if we don't know their state with Allah Azza wa Jalla. Even if they die on the battlefield. Even if they died on the battlefield. Now, so we say that if a person dies like this, it is a sign of a good ending, but we don't speak definitively regarding anyone being in paradise or the hellfire, or that so-and-so is a martyr, unless we know that to be the case. Allah knows best. People of innovation, are some of them Muslim? Can you give an example of how to give da'wah to them? Yes, some of them are Muslim. Some of them are Muslim. Bid'ah is of various types. Bid'ah that is mukaffira and bid'ah that is mufassiqa. Bid'ah that would take a person outside the fold of the religion, and bid'ah that would make a person a fasiq, but he's still within the fold of the religion. Some bid'ah are in ibadat and actions, some bid'ah are in creed and belief. And so as it relates to how to give da'wah to such a person, then we give them, if a person is a person of bid'ah, because there's a difference between a person practicing a bid'ah and a person being a person of bid'ah. A person of bid'ah, we keep our distance. We present to them proofs and evidences if we're qualified to do so. But we don't give them da'wah by walking with them, talking with them, mixing and mingling with them, going to their masajid and hanging out with them, taking them out to dinner and things like this, and taking them as friends. Rather, our da'wah, if anything, you call them to the Salafi masjid and tell them come there and we can discuss your issues. Perhaps you give them a book to read or a lecture to listen to and the likes of that. But as far as mixing and mingling with bid'ah on the premise that you're giving them da'wah, Shaykh Rabi, he said that even some of the ulama should mix with them to give them da'wah, unless that alim is like Ahmad ibn Hanbal, or unless that alim is like Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, or unless that alim is like Shaykh Muhammad Nasiruddin al-Albani. If he is not like one of these three on their level or similar to them, even some of the ulama should mix with them to give them da'wah. How much more so us? Allah knows best. disregard and advice for Salafi sisters who register matrimonial sites. Also, can you advise brothers on working hard to get married to Salafi sisters? We sometimes receive requests or available sisters, but no available brothers, and to curb them marrying deviants. Now, say, what you asked this question some time ago to Shaykh Salim Bamihris regarding utilizing these matrimonial sites and the likes of this. And Shaykh Salim, he mentions that this is not from the methodology of the Salaf, or not how Ahl Sunnah go about getting married. But rather, what I advised with earlier, this is based upon his advice that he gave to us some time ago, that one should make it known amongst the Salafi community that they're looking for a righteous spouse. Perhaps you speak to the sisters in your local community, or you speak to an elder auntie within the community, or have you let her know that you're looking for a righteous husband, and perhaps her husband or know somebody, or maybe she has sons, or what have you. Similarly for the brothers, he doesn't peruse the likes of these matrimonial sites that you'll find online, in order to find a spouse, but rather he takes the same methodology and makes it known amongst the Salafi community that he's looking for a righteous spouse. And now we say that definitely Ahl Sunnah should marry amongst Ahl Sunnah. You should marry amongst Ahl Sunnah, and don't just incline towards these sisters who you may see online posting their pictures and things like this. May Allah guide them, guide us, and rectify them. But a person may see that and see, oh, the sister's cute, let me see what's up with her, I want to marry her. And they leave off the Salafi sisters. Thus, the Salafi sister may begin to doubt and think that, hey, this is what I may need to do in order to find a husband. I need to broadcast myself and post myself online and like this. Well, we say be patient for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, and trust the process and marry a Salafi. Marry a person who you don't have to worry about their manhaj. You don't have to worry about them having you in strange gatherings along with strange people doing strange things. Marry from Ahl Sunnah. This is what we have to say about this, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. I apologize for not giving more, but as I mentioned, I'm about to travel. So we'll speak with the people, inshallah ta'ala, next month. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أخير دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاكم الله خيرا يا شيخنا for taking time off your busy schedule to meet with our brothers and sisters. We pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala see you through your journey and bless you and preserve you and your family upon goodness. جزاكم الله خيرا. And inshallah, we hope to see you next in the next class with the light. حياكم الله. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.